Good morning, afternoon or evening wherever you are. I'm Paul Clark and welcome to my studio. So today we're going to be painting this little poppy field just as a little tribute for Remembrance Day. So I hope you'll come and join me and we'll paint this together. Before we start, I've had a few people ask me about my paint management. Now that's a little bit more complicated than it sounds, so let me just explain. Okay, so all artists will find their own way that they like to use their paints, and this is just something that I use. This is my main palette, which is a Geoff Kersey branded palette. I like it because it's got lots of nice deep wells for mixing my paints, as well as all of these separate little compartments for putting my paint in. Now, if I'm pre-mixing some paints, in other words, I'm using a lot of wet washes and I need paint quickly, then I'll pre-mix my paint and have this separate porcelain palette here. So generally I prefer to use paint from a tube because I just find it's easier. All you need to do is just to squirt a dollop out into your compartments, and it means that you can mix nice wet washes and get a lot of paint quickly. Now, one thing I particularly like about Winsor & Newton paints, and this is their professional quality as well as their student grade Cotman brand, is that when they're dry they form this crust on the surface, which means that it doesn't come off, which is quite handy. Okay, so when I'm ready to paint, all I do, dip my brush in the water, pick up the colour, lay it into my palette. I don't bother spraying all the paints with water first. I just get the colour in until I'm happy, add some water. And an important thing to do is make sure you get as much paint out of the brush as you can, because there's no good just putting it back into the water and losing all that lovely paint. So just make sure you drain as much paint out onto your palette as you can. Okay, so when it comes to mixing and adding another colour in, again, get the paint out of the brush, a quick clean with water, and then you can add your other colour into the mix. Now you do get some cross-contamination from time to time. Some of the red paint will get into your blue, but that's okay, you know, a little bit of a clean now and again. And there you have your mix. Now I know that some artists also like to use two pots, one for cleaning their brush and one for mixing the colours, but hey, I'm not that disciplined enough and I end up just using one, and that works for me. Another little tip is don't have your cup of tea anywhere near your water pot. I'm sure we've all done this. Now when I'm finished painting, I don't always clean out my palette, because all you need to do the following day is just add water to your mix and you're ready to go again. So they're always useful to have these nice colours just left in your palette. Okay, then what I do at the end of the day when I'm finished painting, I just take the lid, and this is another thing I like about this palette, is that you've got these mixing areas on the inside. Just pop the lid on, stops any spiders crawling in the middle of the night, and I'm finished for the day. But if you prefer to use pans instead of tubes, you can work it exactly the same way. So adding some water, letting it come out onto your palette, making sure you get all the paint off of it, clean, then make your mix. Okay, materials for today. My paper is some Bockingford Rough. My brushes are a large mop, 3/4 inch flat, number 12, a number 8 round, and a number 3 rigger. Colours today: normal primaries, cobalt blue, alizarin crimson, cadmium yellow, also some cadmium orange, some yellow ochre, and some cerulean blue, and a separate mix of some cadmium red. Off we go. A simple drawing, so no template needed this week. Then with my large mop, I'm wetting just the sky area in clean water. Then with my flat brush, quickly dropping in some cadmium orange and a touch of alizarin crimson. Now for Mr. Blue Sky, this is a 50-50 mix of cobalt blue and cerulean blue, and I'm letting them just blend together. For taking out the colour on the poppies, I'm just dabbing out with a tissue. Now this purple mix is a 50-50 cobalt blue and alizarin crimson, and I'm dropping in wet for this suggestion of some distant trees. Now for the foreground, I'm using some yellow ochre here in the centre. And then a 50-50 mix of cobalt blue and cadmium yellow. Then with some clean water, I'm just softening along the top of the horizon line. Now for the rest, I'm mixing a darker green just by adding in to my existing green a little more cobalt blue and some more alizarin crimson. While still wet, I'm dropping in the darker green, especially under where each poppy is, just giving that little bit of shadow. Now with my number 8 brush, I'm painting in a few stripes of cadmium red into the distance here. And then a few wet blobs. Next, with the wooden end of my brush, I'm scoring in a few suggestions of grasses and stems. Now with the same purple mix I used before, I'm painting in a very simple shape to suggest a church spire surrounded by some trees. And then dropping in some clean water just to soften those edges. Now one of my favourite techniques is to soften and blend some of the edges now with a damp tissue. Okay, so now it's time to let it dry, so it's a perfect time for a short break, and as it's still morning, a lovely mug of Earl Grey tea. Okay, so it's poppy time. I start by painting the ones closest to the sun in a watery cadmium orange, then straight away dropping in some cadmium red. Now what I want to do here is to create the illusion that the sun is bleaching out the edge of these poppies, so I'm just adding in some clean water to slightly blur the edge. And these ones here, I'm just simply painting in cadmium red. Okay, apologies everyone for the constant changing of light on the paper. It's a very cloudy day today here in the UK, and the sun keeps blasting into my studio through the skylight. So next I'm using the purple mix again and just adding a little dark into the petals. Okay, I'm drying my brush here and then just lifting out a few lighter values. Now I'm painting all the remaining poppies in exactly the same way. Clean water here, again just to soften some of the edges. Now a quick spray with clean water and then back in with the dark green. And some more scoring with the brush end. Now I'm using my rigger here for some finer grass details. Of course, any painting of mine you know by now has to have a few splats. Now with a 50-50 mix of cadmium red and alizarin crimson, I'm just painting in a few subtle shadows on the petals. And here I'm just making sure it looks like two separate poppies. Now keep these strokes to a minimum, it's so easy to overwork this bit. And here again I'm just softening some of the edges with the tissue just to try and create a bit of movement. Next for the stems. Now the idea here is to really create the impression of the sun bleaching out the colour, so I'm using a much lighter green on the stems in the centre, and then a much darker one on the ones at the side. And here I'm just dropping in a touch of red wet in wet for the little buds. Final touches, a little red soft pastel for a few mid-ground poppies. And then a yellow pastel pencil for a little grass and stem highlights. And I think we're about done. Yep, that'll do. Well, I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did and that you'll give it a go. This one's not too difficult. You can do it. Please don't forget to do all the normals, like, subscribe, leave a comment, and certainly leave a suggestion on something that you'd like to paint. I'd love to know. So take care everyone, stay safe, and I will look forward to seeing you all again very soon. Bye for now.